So welcome. I'm here today to talk about the iPad TV or a tablet TV, as it's come to be known here at Riverside Secondary School. I'm going to start off here at the beginning with what was initially our prototype. So a couple of senior students of mine had the idea of making this tablet TV, and they had some iPads. So we thought, okay, how would we go about doing that? So like any idea, you want to take it from its initial concept and then develop on it. So what we did here was we just took it, what you can see is a very simple little box, nothing too drastic about it, but we wanted a way to be able to slide it in, okay, slide our tablet in so that it helped to represent a TV. And so you can see what we've kind of done here. That we made, okay? Again, same kind of thickness and everything else, so that we had some thicker dowels that fit in here, okay? This slid in, and of course we made it so that what happened here was we put a little piece on the back, okay, on the back here, so that when you put the tablet TV in, you can just put it down on its back, okay? And then gently put it in, and then you can slide this in, okay? So no matter how many times you go through this, and this has seen better days, you can see it's starting to peel off here, and you can use different pieces for the inside. I used a 1/4-inch piece for mine. It's important to note you need to anticipate what you're gonna put in the front to go and help slide it in and out. Otherwise, you're gonna run into potential problems. So, anyways, what I did here was you can see it can't slide out. Okay, my hand there just for safety, but because I've got that stick that I've glued inside there. The problem I have is I have no way of being able to plug it in if I want to continue to go and charge the iPad. So we modified that and created a little slot in there for the next one. So this one, these two are relatively the same. You can see I've got a little bit more meat around here. Again, I didn't put anything around the side to imitate any knobs or anything else like that. Fine, okay. And then one of the kids had this unique idea. He said, well, can we make it like a theme TV? And I said, well, what do you mean a theme TV? He said, like The Simpsons. So what we did with the next one was, of course, this requires you to go ahead and take a look and do a little research. So we ended up having to go ahead and do a little research and taking a look at what The Simpsons TV looked like, and then, of course, going from there. What we ended up coming away with was what we have here. And, of course, the antennas, all I used for the antennas, because they're just wires, I used an old coat hanger. That's all I used. So a little white-coated wire coat hanger. Again, nothing. I think a couple kids brought them in. We drilled a couple holes in there, and I didn't even bother to glue them in, but of course you can do that if you want. They bend all the time, and you just bend them back. I used a set of pliers just with some tape on them just to go and take and bend so that the teeth didn't actually grab and cut here, and then I just bent them into the shape that I wanted to make it look like that. Anyways. Now I've used fir, hemlock, poplar for this particular project. I really like poplar, it's nice and clean, okay? But when you buy wood, okay, you're gonna get it from, we get it for about an inch. You want to plane that down about 3/4 of an inch. That's more than thick enough for what it is you want to go and do here. At the same time, you want to keep in mind that the width of the wood is really important, and the width of the wood is important because it gives you the depth for the TV. You don't want something too thin, because if it's too thin, it's just going to tip over, all right? And if it's too thick, it doesn't look proportionate to everything else. So you can kind of see what I've done here on these. You know, they're relatively proportionate to what it is, you know, we've done. All right, so I'm not going to waste any wood, but I don't want to go ahead and have something too small, knowing full well that it won't work either. So you're going to need at least 4. I think I've usually go about 4.5, 5 inches for each piece, and then we go from there. What I was able to go ahead and do, I was able to go ahead and find a piece that somebody had cut before, and it's good because it's a good demonstration piece. So you want to go ahead, and of course, whenever we go ahead and do something, I've kind of added to the pieces as I've kind of gone, and then I've used the last one as a reference. So if this was the last one, I take a tape measure and I measure this out, and then of course I can see, if you look closely on here, okay, this one's actually probably a better illustration, but you can see there's a rabbet joint here, and the rabbet joint works really well for students, younger students, because if it's done properly, okay, you can either use the table saw or you can use the router, okay, to create those joints. If you do it properly and the wood's all squared off and everything, it works out really nicely to square out, and you don't have any issues. Again, by making it a little bit larger, you eliminate any possibilities in terms of making it too small, because that's obviously a problem as well, okay? So what we've done here, and I just, when I first did this, I just kind of guessed, how much of a lip do I want in the front? How much of a lip do I want there? And I basically went with about 1/4 of an inch. You can play with that. These are variables you can go ahead and accommodate for yourself. The real keys become, I need to make this dado. So what I did here, what I did here was I created the rabbet joint on both sides, making sure that the top and bottom piece were exactly the same length. And then I set it up accordingly on the table saw. Now you can do the same thing with a router, which is what we did, I think, with the kids last semester, just so that we made sure that there wasn't a bottleneck in certain places. The important factor here now becomes the piece that we use to go ahead and slide in, okay? That little piece. Now I use 1/4 inch door skin plywood for mine, but depending on where you get it from, you want to make sure that you've cut it appropriately, because some of the wood I found that I get is slightly more than 1/4 inch and some of it's a little less. You don't want it so thin that it kind of wobbles. You obviously don't want to cut it 1/4 inch and then realize your piece is a little bit larger than that. It's really difficult to get that after. Now I use the table saw blade for it, so what I do, I'll go back on here now and I'll set the table saw to go and accommodate this dado, okay? And I will set it accordingly, and what I do, making sure my table saw's off and everything else, I take it and I simply just kind of line it up. And what I'm going to be watching for is I'm looking, put your safety glass on the benefit, take it and I'm just going to watch it, and as I'm going to reach that point where it kind of lifts off the table, I know that that's, okay, started to lift off the table, I know that that's a little high, so I'm going to bring it back down again so you can see kind of where we are, and then when I run it across, I can't quite catch it on the blade. There we go, so we're close. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, okay, that's close enough, okay? So what I'm going to do now is, if this wasn't done, I took a piece like this and I did it, I would set it up, and I would set it up so I've got 1/4 of an inch, okay? I use 1/4 of an inch, again, that's a pretty good start, you know, wherever you kind of want, and it's a good idea to mark these things out on here, okay? Now if I had my 4 pieces, I actually discovered one key aspect, and what that is cutting down the back side to allow me to go ahead and put a backing on it, really helpful. But it's even more helpful if I do that first. So that would be one of the first things that I would do, and it's a good idea again, okay? It just makes it nice and neat if you go ahead and you do the same depth as you've done your rabbet joints on the edge, okay? Drawing it on here is not a bad idea because it allows you, okay? It allows you to see kind of where you're going to go with that, and then I usually just shade in this piece to help illustrate the fact that that is gone. I'm going to be cutting that away, okay? Now I mark it on the one side that I'm going to cut it, you know. What I do is I flip it over, and then I just have to remember to flip it back over before I go and do it. I take it and I line this up, making sure my fence is all lined up, boom, boom, boom. If I'm going to make this 1/4 inch, now's a good time, okay, before I set this up, it's a good time, or I can even do it now, to go ahead and lift the throat plate off, okay, and then you can go ahead and change the blade, okay, to 2 1/8 inch pieces, maybe a dado set, just so I can go ahead and get that and cut that off in one motion. If I'm going to use the 1/8 inch, I just use this, okay, and then I'll move it over slightly after, okay. So I would take this piece, I would take it, I'd flip it over. This is the piece that was obviously kicked back on somebody. I'm going to use it. It's nice and straight. It's good to go that way. I'll use my push stick, which I've got. Should be kicking around here. Oh, there's my push stick. Okay, so we're good to go there. I step back, okay, off to the side. I'm watching. I'm making sure this is nice and tight on the fence here, so you want to bring that in. It's nice and tight along that fence when I go ahead and cut. And that's where my eyes follow. I never have my eyes follow around the blade, ever, okay? So that's not an issue, all right? I'll turn that on. Keep it nice and tight in there. Nice and tight, watching, making sure it's nice and tight against the